It's a T-Rex! Cordyceps. Something. In all seriousness, I find the whole Cordyceps things to be really fascinating. But what I find even more fascinating is fun things like T-Rexes. So I'm going to start by building a beautiful armature out of some really thick floral wire. Just kidding, it's armature wire, it's not even floral wire. And then I built out the body with a whole bunch of aluminum foil and tape, but that was really boring to watch. So getting to the clay pit was a lot more fun. I'm still using the Sculpey, the Super Sculpey clay, just because I have that giant box of it and it's fabulous. And I know it's not as exactly what everybody else recommends, but when you're first starting out, this is what you do. And I happen to have this. It was cheap, so that's what I did. Once I've got all the clay kind of on his body, it's time to really start working on those details like the mouth. And I fidgeted with his mouth for quite a while, but the thing is, it's kind of loose on there. There's no real good support, and the neck is kind of narrow, so you just kind of have to work that mouth on there. There's a little bit of magic. And if you noticed, I didn't have a whole lot to on his hands or his feet yet, so I went ahead and put him in the oven to bake, get that body going, and then made some little talons, claws, whatever you want to call them, claws I guess, for both his feet and his hands. I didn't really discriminate on the size. There were a couple that were small and stubby and a couple that weren't. And I apologize for the camera bouncing. I have no idea what was going on. Apparently the camera was just having a party. With the claws all made, I went ahead and decided to build a little form for the Cordyceps thingy head growth. And all I did was I kind of bent some wire, again, a thinner version of the wire, into a rough U shape, and then gave it a little bend here, a little bend there, and covered it with some clay. Nothing really fancy, just wanted to use that wire to give that structure a little bit, make it a little bit easier to stand straight out from the head while it's baking. Then I just repeated it, made a second one so that we had two, since it's supposed to be symmetrical like that. So as you can see, I really don't know why I narrate this at all, but as you can see, I just used some of my sculpting tools to kind of smooth it out, give a little ridge here, a little ridge there, and really just kind of add a little depth. I don't know why I did this. I ended up covering it all up later, but you know, it made me happy in the moment. I was having a really good time, kind of making those edges almost flare, like get poofier right at the edge. It was just kind of fun. With all that kind of done and out of the way, it was time to make a dinosaur hand, I guess, because we did the claws, but not really, and I don't know. The claws worked out really well for the feet, but they didn't seem to work really well for the quote-unquote hand, so I don't know what I was doing there, banging on the table at some kind of rawr. But here you can see where I kind of defined the claw itself separate from the fingies. I know it's only got 2 fingies. Don't worry about it. The T-Rex hands had fingies, but there weren't a whole lot of them. And it's just, they didn't even really use them, guys. They didn't even really use them. I tried to get a little webbing in there in between the kind of fingies. But I don't really know why. We don't know what T-Rexes look like. We have no clue. So maybe they did have a little webbing there. Who knows? It's a useless appendage. Who knows? And then I just kind of texturized it with this fun other tool that I've got. I don't even know what this is. Some kind of bottle brush of some sort. I don't know. It's great. So here's our T-Rex out of the oven. Very beautiful. And I just kind of smashed some clay in there on the end of a foot, and then use this liquid Sculpey to basically glue the talons we had made before on there, and kind of smooth that back and make it look like it's supposed to be there. Not going to worry about webbing on the feetsies, because again, we don't know. We don't know. And in their footprints, it didn't look like there was webbing. So, well, we'll see. Yeah. And here you can see I used a north of the border wormy dealie to kind of add some clay right around there to hold that nail in place, claw in place, so that it just, why is the camera shaking? Some kind of party, this, jeez. I really didn't want the T-Rex to like sit on his tail, but during the interim process, that's kind of what happened, because he fell off the piece of wood that I had him on. Long story short, I have to keep standing him up to make sure the claws aren't going to be too low hanging and not able for him to stand without resting on his tail. With his feet clawsies done, we can do a little action here with his hands, and go ahead and take those little hands that we made and work them on to the end stubbies of his arm. This is really simple. I'm not even sure why I filmed it. I mean, it's shoving two pieces of baked clay together with a piece of unbaked clay. Super complex stuff here. There's a lovely view of the back of my hand, which I know you appreciate. And, oh look! The back of my arm! It's beautiful! I drilled a couple of holes in his head to get this to sit in with one of these little clay drilly dealies. It's a little hand drilly hootie. But to kind of get there, I kind of had to almost stand over him, and it just made for a really interesting angle. But it worked out really well that I had put it on the wires, because the wires gave a lot of support. And once you get the hole drilled, it doesn't even really have to be super deep to get that Cordyceps blossom. What is that called? To stay up, because you've got the structure on the inside of the dinosaur head, and then you have the structure of the blossom that just works out really well to hold it up and keep it straight. It literally does not wiggle even a little bit. And I did use some of the liquid Sculpey, and then I used some clay down around the bottom of where the Cordyceps came on, just to kind of make sure that we were all kind of one piece at this point. But again, I'm using the Super Sculpey, and things just keep falling off throughout the whole rest of this video. Things keep falling off. It's great. It's great. Now that I kind of got that repaired, I went ahead and added the other half of the Cordyceps head nugget thing. I wanted to make sure that it's all really good and welded on there, you know. with just a little bit of the Super Sculpey in a wormy dealy, just pressed up right into there, to kind of make it one unit. And we'll change that up later, or make it look like it's bursting out shortly. But to be honest, these things happen in ants who have an exoskeleton. So I don't really know. They don't really happen in things that have a soft shell. So what do you know? How do you know it works? With that all good and baked, we're going to return to a view of not the back of my arm, awesome, and start filling in that wee Cordyceps thing. And I think that I just went a little crazy, a little overboard with the amount of little squigglies, but I had a really good time making it, and it looked really, really pretty. So let's just enjoy a few minutes of little doody-doos being added to the blossomy dealy, and how fun is that I'm making a muskroom on the top of a T-Rex head. It's cool. Working it in there, and you'll notice my fingers are getting a little pink. So apparently one of my tools decided to bleed all over me. I don't know what else to call it. This little silicone tool here, I don't know if I was sweaty that day or the clay was getting it, but I suddenly turned pink, and so did my dinosaur. All sorts of, it was really grody looking. Grody. With him all baked again, it's like the 94th time, it was time to put in his teepees. So I made these off camera, and then I'm just going to jam them into a little gummy wormy dealy that I shoved into his mouth. And then, you know, there may or may not have been some liquid Sculpey involved, but really they're just jammed in there quite well. And then when you've got that many sharp teepees, it's just kind of a thing. It's kind of a thing. It's gonna get you a different view of how those teeth go in, you know. Again, it's a very fidgety process, but you know, when you're doing dental work, you really have to do the dental work right? And then you have to add a tongue, and I mean, when you're a dentist for T-Rexes, this is how it's done. Tongue and then the teeth is. And don't forget the teeth on the top row, you know, on the top of the mouth. Apparently T-Rexes weren't just gummy up there, they had teeth up there too. So you gotta tuck that up in there and get the teeth right up in the top of their mouth. It's a real complicated problem, the T-Rex teeth. You know, at this point I decided it was high time to start adding a little bit of detail to his face, because he was really creeping me out, guys. So I started with nostrils, nostrilias, and I kind of made a mess of his little face, but you know, you gotta flatten it out and just just make it work. Gotta make it work for you. You know, when the going gets tough, you shove a pencil in the nostril, and that'll make that really more nostril-y. You know, because they're T-Rexes. Do they need to be like real nostrils? No, he's made of clay. He's fine. He's fine. At this point, this is where I realized the folly of my poor design choice in giving him one eye is fine, but now I'm working right up under the edge of that cordyceps top blossom thingy, and it's really tough to work that in there. So I worked it around the little kind of leftover ends that I did there, but it made him look sad. He looks very sad. He's my sad little T-Rex with a fungus growing out of his head. But, you know, with his little partially pink eyeball in there, you know, and a couple more wormy dealies, he's got a good and decent eye on that one side now. I'm sure it doesn't work because, you know, there's fungus growing out of his head and all. But it sure does look cool. I mean, all those other cordyceps are probably really, really jealous because they lost their eyes. But not my guy. Not my guy. Oh, and before we get too far away, we have to put away our teeth. Any extra teeth we have, we're collecting them for the teeth box for some reason. I don't know. I made a lot of teeth. That's what counts. Just gonna put those away, and then it's time for some spine. Boop, 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 now it's time for a base. So I had that 2x4 from earlier, and we're just gonna use it again. And so I smashed some clay in my smasher thingy and slopped it on top of the wood because, you know, that's what you do. That's what you do, is you just kind of slop it on there and you make it work. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You just got to get it on there and kind of slomp it on because you're making it look like a rock. And it's a 2x4 that you want to make look like a rock. So, you know, glue it on there with some Super Sculpey. I don't know if this works. We're just giving it a try. It seems to have worked subsequent to shooting this. But at the time, I was like, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. And so I just kind of banged on it a little bit, beat on it, so much so that I shook the whole table. It was really tons of fun. And that made a really good rock shape. It really did. I had a really good time. Once Mr. Dinosaur was baked, and so was his base, it was time to put him on there. And then I found that I had some fabulous dried out old paper clay that I just had laying around. So I just used a little tiny tube of E6000 and broke it up into chunks like little pieces of rubble, little pieces of rock, and then just kind of glued it to the big rock, cause that's normal, totally normal. With all the knobbly bits of rock in place, it was time to start the fun. And you may recognize this beautiful orange color, you think, from my last video, but the surprise is on you. I somehow managed to mix up orange again by accident, meaning to mix up green. Don't ask how it happened, but I wasn't going to waste it. This is just a prime coat. I did eventually figure out how to make green. You make it by going to the store and buying it. and then you mix it with other greens and other shades of things, like some dark blue or black or whatever, to make it a little darker or whatever color you want it to be. But you don't start with color that isn't the color you kind of want it to be. I don't even bother at this point. And he's my T-Rex, and I mean, I know that he's a little wonky and a little weird. So I decided he would be even wonkier and a little even weirder with some camouflagey type coloring. So I got out some old black acrylic paint that's really hunky chunky and just kind of splootered it across his back, like almost like camouflagey, stripey dealies, like a zebra. You know, I don't want the flies bothering him. That's what it is. And then I just kind of patted it back, you know, like, because, you know, we don't know what T-Rexes look like. Give me a break. And because his cordyceps is like blossoming out of his head, I kind of felt like a pinkish tone looked right, because you know mushrooms, you know, pinkish brownish kind of in color. So I figured I would start with a little fleshy almost color, and when I say almost, I mean like basically the same color I am, which is really kind of funny. But then I decided that a little bit of green wouldn't hurt anybody, because I mean, you know, maybe some dinosaur DNA helped dictate some of this. So I gave a little bit of a green undertone, and then some red accidentally got in there, and so it just became this whole like mishmash of fabulous and wonderful colors coming together on this mushroomy blossom. What are we calling this? Is it a mushroom cap? I don't know. But regardless, it's fun, you know, flesh colored mushroom head. It was just too flat, so I just started adding additional shades of everything and kind of wet blending it. I know that I don't always do a very good job of explaining the painting techniques that I use, because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of doing it. But this seemed really fun, and it was leaving this really fun veiny effect whenever I would kind of get some reds and some orange and some flesh color together, and it was making a really fun veiny effect. So I just kept doing it everywhere, because veiny is fun. And while his little noggin ornament kind of dried, I went ahead and I had sealed the rock, but I wanted to kind of make it more rock-like than just a giant black pile of rocks, because I didn't feel like that really fit the theme. Not that anything really is a theme with me, but this is so fun because you can see the edges of the different pieces of rock really start to pop out from that black void of nothingness from the primer. And after I made a sloppy mess with the gray, I decided to go in with a little bit of this white. And some might call it bone white. Others might call it I didn't do anything but slop the white out of the acrylic paint container. And then just plop it on there, because we're going to do a wash later to bring everything together. And white is a great place to start. Who cares what the actual tone of it is to start with, right? Right? And now it's on to some washes. So I shook up my wash from before. It's just black acrylic paint and some floor, I don't know. It's just water and acrylic paint and a little bit of like floor cleaner. And then I just kind of glob it on there and let it dribble for a minute, and then kind of pat it back if it's got bubbles or dribbling somewhere I don't want it to be. And it just kind of brings all the colors together. You have to be real sparing with it in some places because it does like to mess with your acrylics. They are water soluble, so if you haven't let them dry for long enough, it will kind of make a bit of a scene, but they're not going to go anywhere. They're just going to kind of dribble a little. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Maybe I've used too much floor cleaner. Maybe I'm just cleaning. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. And when working with this, you know, just a base kind of wash that's not really special, I just kind of blob it on everywhere. It helps pop those shadows a little bit more, and really just pulls out those little special details that you left because, you know, not everything was smooth or whatever. It's fun. Really, with that, it's just time to move on to our final reveal. I mean, whoa, here it comes. And that's it. There she is. That is our Cordyceps T-Rex and my janky turntable. So if you guys wouldn't mind, if you've sat through this long, go ahead and subscribe. Maybe like, I don't know, share it with your friends. But I'll do another one here shortly. Thank you so much for being here. I love you. Bye.